Hi, I'm Oliver, and this is Deep Cuts, a channel dedicated to music for lovers of music. And so, since we're fast approaching the end of 2016, I thought it would be time for me to have a discussion about some of my favourite albums of this year. I'm only going to say this once, don't take this list placement too seriously. I've tried to do 20 to 1 and I've tried to list it incrementally like that, but as always, lists are pretty arbitrary in terms of their placement. I mean, how are you supposed to compare two albums that are so wildly different from each other? At the end of the day, these are just 20 records that I think deserve your time because they're all brilliant. And I have tried to give it a numerical order, but just don't take it too seriously. Also, I have talked about a few of these records on my best of 2016 so far video, and also my hidden gems video that I did a couple of weeks back, but so apologies for any slight repetition, but most of the records I'm talking about on this list are ones I haven't really discussed too much on this channel yet, so stay tuned. As always, please comment on your favourite records of the year, what you agree with, what you disagree with. You know, at the end of the year is a smorgasbord for music lovers. There's always so much to discuss, especially with these lists everywhere and people talking about what impressed them most this year. So yeah, make sure you comment down below and have a bit of a chat. Before I do my top 20, there's a couple of albums that are like honourable mentions. I've enjoyed them, but I didn't include them in my list. Albums like Kaytranada's 99.9%, Whitney's Light Upon the Lake, Joey Purp's Eye Drops, Swan's The Glowing Man. I'm trying to think of the rest of them off the top of my head. Jenny Haval Blood Bitch, I really enjoyed that record. Exploded View with their self-titled, and Leonard Cohen's You Want It Darker. There's a couple of records there that I really enjoyed. They just didn't quite make the list, but I'd still suggest checking them out if you haven't already. Number 20, Death Grips, Bottomless Pit. What a way to kick off this list. Sacramento experimental hip-hop punk noise band Death Grips released their record Bottomless Pit in 2016. I think it's one of my favourite releases from them so far. Pulling back slightly from some of the more experimental exploits of No Love Deep Web and Jenny Death, there's a renewed focus on this record, and as for me personally, I feel like they've delivered some of their most earth-shaking tracks in their career so far. The brash, sweaty Hothead is just pure insanity. You've got those sort of tracks, and then you've got a track like which they toy with a more laid-back groove, albeit laid back with, you know, in typical Death Grips fashion, with Ride squawking at you and, you know, deep sub bass smashing you in the face. So it's laid back in Death Grips terms, but yeah, it's a really great record. Go and have a listen. Number 19, NV, Binasu. Binasu is Russian artist Kate Shilonisova creating a joyful and adventurous pop album that starts from 80s synth pop to experimental percussive ambience, all the way to the influence of Japanese pop sounds. I talked about this record on my Hidden Gems video, but this shouldn't be a hidden gem. This should be being experienced by as many people as possible. I really enjoy this album, and it deserves to be spoken about along with the more high-profile releases of 2016. This record is endlessly listenable. I love how Kate can go from the 80s pop cheese commemoration of tracks like Kata to the semi-ambient experimentalism of tracks like Keiku. Really great listen. Number 18, Huerco S, for those of you who have and those of you who will. Here you have it, the best ambient release of the year. For those of you who have is a dense, cerebral, serpentine record, a massaging of the ears and the mind. I love how this album manages to be heavy on the ears, yet endlessly comforting. It might just be me, but the dense collage of repetitious samples and sounds creates something so hypnotic. It just wills me to close my eyes and get lost in this dense thicket of sounds that is created on this. Very hypnotic stuff. If you want a little sample, listen to the track Lifeblood. Number 17, Angel Olsen, My Woman. Singer-songwriter Angel Olsen's fourth LP feels like a step back in time to the sickly sweet, saccharine sounds of 1960s pop. But these songs are written with a jagged edge of pain from love and sorrow, and a knowing humour and an irony. No, seriously, listen to track Never Be Mine and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. I just love the sound of this record. It does the retro rock sound really well, but equally the dark, lush balladry of the 7-minute track Woman. I think you'd be pretty hard pressed to find someone who couldn't appreciate and enjoy this album. Make sure you go and listen to it if you haven't yet. Number 16, The Hotelier, Goodnes. Generally, I'm not too hot on the emo revival thing, and despite not really liking The Hotelier's last record, I really enjoyed this. I thought it was an anthemic blast, it's passionate, it wears its heart on its sleeve, it's quite raw. I guess you would expect all those things from an album that's being labelled emo. Christian Holden and co have created a coarse and ragged yet structured album, and there's a lot to dig into if you want to. I mean, Christian did an accompanying essay contextualizing the songs, and there's also a lot of ideas of 19th century transcendentalism in there as well, but I wasn't particularly bothered about that myself. To put it straight, the band managed to get their emotions across in this music without really needing all of that stuff and just using the basic instrumentation of guitar, bass, drums, piano and vocals. Sun is my favourite track on here, with this huge simmering build-up before this explosive outro. Love it. Number 15, Blood Orange, Freetown Sound. I'm constantly impressed by Dev Hynes. The first time I listened to him was when he was fronting the noise squawk rock band Test Icicles, and then I fell in love with him with his folk croons on Lightspeed Champion, and now his new reinvention, Blood Orange. Freetown Sound is an album with a powerful social message, delivered with passion-filled R&B hooks and memorable grooves. It's a record that uses a collage of sounds, including samples from films and documentaries, in order for Dev to portray his overall theme of what it's like to be black in the 21st century. The deep, frantic drum sample on track Better Than Me is joined with these stirring piano chords and melodic synth lines, one of my favourite tracks on the album. It's really hard to pick out a single track to discuss, really, because the whole thing, it just never puts a foot wrong, this record. It is seamless from start to finish. If you listen to Best of You's Tropical Beat and that doesn't make you want to listen to the entire album, then nothing will. Number 14, Geir Sundstol, Langen Row. This was another record that I spoke about in my Hidden Gems video a couple of weeks ago. Geir Sundstol is a multi-string instrumentalist hailing from Norway, and he's signed to the brilliant jazz label Huerco. His second LP, Langen Row, is a languorous, dreamy record, focusing on texture, ambience, and mood. His sound is incredibly unique because he utilises string instruments, which is quite an unusual sound for a record like this, and as a result creates a very unusual, unique sonic palette that I feel like needs to be listened to by more people, because it has such a unique vision, and it draws you in because of that. Listen to the track Loss. If you don't love this, then this record is not for you. Number 13, Anderson .Paak, Malibu. I read somewhere that the fact that this record was released a week after Blackstar and managed to still shine in those dark January weeks is indicative of its power. It's an album brimming with soul, glittering with beautiful melodies. It's an album that's there to pick you up when you need it most. Anderson .Paak definitely treads the line of pop and hip hop, but it's not that cut and dried because he also traverses the landscape of jazz, blues, soul, funk. It's just a melting pot collage. It's a bit like Freetown Sound in a way. It's a collage of sounds. It's a celebration of culture, and it just doesn't put a single foot wrong in its 60-minute, 16-track running time. If you want to get an idea of how diverse this record sounds, listen to the ballady sex jam track Silicon Valley, and then listen to the jazzed, funk-laden Heart Don't Stand a Chance. Number 12, Car Seat Headrest, Teens of Denial. Thank you, Will Toledo, for making the best driving album of 2016. This has become my go-to when I'm driving. If you haven't driven with this album on, you should. It's exhilarating, if a little dangerous maybe. Teens of Denial is a raucous, energetic, tireless record. It's the sort of record that makes you want to put your arm around a friend, jump up and down and scream the words into their face. It reminds me of the feeling I used to have with, you know, Weezer's Blue album or something like that. Just endlessly listenable, can sing every lyric. It's that kind of record. The brash power of this album, however, goes hand in hand with Will Toledo's songcraft. He's got a really good ear for melodies and hooks, and he's able to write tender and emotional songs that also pack a real punch. Just listen to the 11-minute Ballad of Costa Concordia, where Will compares his life's failures with the captain of the Costa Concordia ship. If you need any more convincing, check out Destroyed by Hippie Powers and Drunk Drivers, Killer Whales, two of the best tracks this year, no doubt. Number 11, Aesop Rock, The Impossible Kid. Aesop Rock is one of the most underrated hip-hop artists, consistently releasing good quality albums that pack an emotional punch, they have integrity, they're intelligent, and they're fun to listen to. He's like a lyrical gymnast. He has a huge vocabulary and creates these intelligent songs that occasionally you need to flee off to Genius to go and work out what the hell he's talking about. The production of this record is urgent and fitting of Aesop's vocal performance. a base of contemporary rock and sci-fi synths and samples. Ace actually pulled back on some of the idiosyncratic lyricism on this record, which has in turn made a lot of the tracks a lot easier to understand. Sometimes you really do have to properly analyse the lyrics to work out what the track's about, and it's less like that on this record, and perhaps makes it a better entry into Aesop Rock's discography. Listen to the track Blood Sandwich for a heartwarming ode to his brothers, and then listen to the hilarious Lot of Years. So much replay value here. Long live Aesop. Number 10, A Tribe Called Quest. We got it from here. Thank you for your service. So in 2016, we were blessed with a new Tribe Called Quest record, the seminal hip-hop group, A Tribe Called Quest. But not just their first record since 1998, one of their best records, and sadly, their last record. Low End Theory and Midnight Marauders are two of my favourite hip-hop albums. You know, socially conscious, intelligent, and creative both lyrically and instrumentally. And We Got It From Here is exactly that too. On this album, they managed to harken back to the modes and beats of 90s Tribe, whilst also updating the sound and bring it kicking into the 21st century. A track like The Killing Season feels like a seamless collision of two different time periods without ever taking away from their original creative spirit and vision. It's their final record, but what a way to go. Stick on Space Program or the funky paranoia of this generation for a taste. Number 9, Greg Ward and 10 Tongues, Touch My Beloved's Thought. Okay, so if you love Charles Mingus's Black Saint and the Sinner Lady as much as I do, you have no excuse not to have listened to this genius work from jazz musician Greg Ward. The idea behind this project was to create a live dance performance of Charles Mingus's Black Saint and the Sinner Lady as he had originally intended it to be, like a dance, balletic form of music. What Ward and his collaborators ended up doing was creating a colourful, complex piece of music that is an ode to Mingus's own record, but is its own original, impassioned, exuberant piece of music. On parts of the album, Ward would take a tiny segment of Black Saint, like a little embellishment, and just draw it out and create an entire composition around it. For example, the track Menacing Lean is based off of a 4-second trombone part that he picked up when he was listening to the record. The synergy of the musicians on this track, it's artistic, it's urgent, it's very bold, it's modern for a jazz record, and it's also bloody tasty. The final track, Gather Round, the Revolution Is at Hand, is this glorious finale. It triumphantly blasts one of the most recognisable sections of Mingus's original piece of music. It's a fantastic way to end this original album, and it's almost like a call and response. It's like a response to Black Saint. It's not a copy. It's a very different piece of music, but it does portray parts of that album, and it's a good way to look at it. If you listen to one jazz record this year, make it that. Number 8, Pinegrove, Cardinal. This is one of my most listened to records of the year. I've lived with it for the last 11 months and it's just become part of my life. At 8 tracks and only 30 minutes long, Cardinal is one of those records that you will listen to and the second it ends, it just wills you to click play all over again. Pinegrove are a band from New Jersey who have managed to create probably the most uplifting record of the year for me. I can't help but sing along every lyric, a little bit like Teens of Denial. I can't help but sing along to every lyric. I know every moment of this album and it just never gets tiring. The record has an organic warmth to it. It's got like a DIY aesthetic, but at the same time, it's rounded and deep and rich as well. It almost, I don't know, it feels like you're standing in a garage listening to them on like a cold, wintry evening. Maybe. Listen to Cadmium and Aphasia and then get stuck into the whole record. I promise you'll be singing along soon. Number 7, Frank Ocean, Blonde. This record was the most delayed revelatory moment for me in 2016. It was probably one of the most hyped albums of the year, just behind The Life of Pablo, I should think. And I've got to say personally, when it finally dropped, I felt quite disappointed. I listened to it a few times. There was no instant classics that you could grab onto, like Thinking About You or Pyramids from the last record, Channel Orange, and I largely dismissed it until a couple of months later. What I realised after properly sitting down and taking some time with the record is it's not supposed to be immediate. It's a gorgeous collage of melodies and sound, minimally percussive and fragile in its stream of consciousness style. Basically, it's brilliant, and I was a dick for not taking more time with it in the first place. Self-Control is probably one of my favourite tracks of the year, especially the second half with its reverb-dripping, gorgeous outro. Number 6, Danny Brown, Atrocity Exhibition. I reviewed this record separately in a video not long ago, so do check that out if you haven't seen it yet. Atrocity Exhibition is a cohesion of chaos, borrowing from my video review. This thing is flat out, balls to the wall, insane. Danny flies through topics of depression and the dark side of fame, accompanied by Paul White's brilliantly esoteric production, bringing in post-punk, new wave influences, esoteric beats, and dark synths. Ain't It Funny is such a simultaneously infectious and unsettling track with these blaring horns and deep 4-to-the-floor bass. It's a real surprise when you listen to the album for the first time. Listen to tracks Pneumonia and Rolling Stone for a taste of this record's brilliant, chaotic nature. You know, Danny Brown is one of the greatest hip-hop artists working today. I'm glad to see him create work that is so vital, immersive, and fun. Number 5, Esperanza Spaulding, Emily's D+Evolution. Wow, this is a step in a different direction. Esperanza Spaulding is a prodigious jazz double bassist and vocalist, and taking a completely different tact on this release from her previous releases, she has crafted a jazz, prog, funk masterpiece that I would have thoroughly worn out if I had it on vinyl or CD. Hooray for digital. This rich album is conceptual, with Esperanza singing as a character Emily who's fighting for peace and the pushing you to discover your real self, which sounds really hippie, right? Well, the music sounds anything but that. Her voice is sublime, powerful, creative, and unusual, and she often employs abstract melodies that really catch you off guard on a first listen. My favourite track is the lush Rest in Peace, textured and both vocally and instrumentally intricate. Also, Funk the Fear is the grooviest track of the year. Number 4, Radiohead, A Moon-Shaped Pool. This was an intensely hyped album, especially if you were, like myself, spent most of the first half of 2016, or up until May anyway, searching the internet and scrambling around for clues as to when the thing would actually drop. And when it finally did, it should have collapsed under the hype, but being Radiohead, it actually didn't. A Moon-Shaped Pool is a intricately crafted record with a heart, each song brimming with emotion and vitality. The level of creativity from Johnny and Tom and co can be clearly displayed just on the first 3 tracks, Burn the Witch, Daydreaming, and Deck's Dark. Only time will tell where this record stands for me in their discography, but I can already tell that it's definitely somewhere up near the top. Probably not the top, but somewhere near the top, that's competing with a lot of classics there. Other tracks to check out are the brilliantly groovy track Identikit, and also the raw, impassioned finale of True Love Waits. We finally got a studio version. Number 3, Jesse Lanza, Oh No. Some of you might be surprised at how high this record is on my list, but probably only if you haven't actually listened to it yourselves. Jesse Lanza is a Canadian songwriter whose second album, Oh No, is probably one of my most listened to albums of the year, and for damn good reason. Jesse uses a myriad of techniques to create such a hazy atmosphere on this album, but it has incredible depth. She uses hefty synths, sequenced drums, and a vocal performance that's fragile and vigorous at the same time. The songwriting is pop sensibility, almost through a lens of left-field electronica, and it's very rich production-wise, but it never feels overproduced, which is very important. Check out the sultry ballad Going Somewhere, or the youthful attitude on VV Violence. I cannot recommend this album enough. Go and listen to it and enjoy it. Number 2, Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, Skeleton Tree. Hopefully some of you have watched my Skeleton Tree review, and if you haven't, you can find it on my channel. And I go into the album in a lot more detail there, so if you haven't seen it, then go and check it out. For now though, I think I just need to say how this album made me feel. And this album is and continues to be one of the most emotional experiences I've had with a piece of music. Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds managed to synthesize the pain and loss of Nick losing his son in a way that I can't quite understand, but what it does do is it hits you like a gut punch. It's a very emotional, heartbreaking listen. If you want to understand what I'm talking about, listen to the tracks Distant Sky and I Need You. And the emotion is just so raw here. It's unlike anything I've experienced with music before. I gave this album a 10, and it definitely deserves that in my opinion. It's a beautiful, somber album that will live with me for a very long time. Number 1, David Bowie, Blackstar. There's no doubt in my mind this album was going to be number 1. The first thing I did with this list is put Blackstar at number 1. This is the album of the year for me, hands down. This record is a morphing hybrid of electronica, jazz, and rock. And it sits up there with some of David Bowie's greatest albums, which is such an achievement when you consider the fact that some of David Bowie's albums are the greatest records in the history of music. Albums like Low and Station to Station, those kind of albums. Maybe it's not as high as an album like Low, but it's certainly up there for me. This album is just incredible. The risks Bowie took with this project are inspired. He shacked up with Donny McCaslin and co, jazz musicians from New York who have so much musical dynamism themselves, and Bowie fed off their creativity to feed his own, and the result of that is this album. I'll never forget listening to Lazarus the day it was released on the Friday, and then listening to it again on the Monday after I'd found out that Bowie had passed away. The intensity of that song emotionally just broke me. Having said that, I think a lot of people assume the album is a somber, sad listen, primarily because he died and it's his epitaph. But that's not the case. If you listen to Sue or in A Season of Crime, that album is scattershot, it's got driving rhythm, it's got breakdowns that sound like drum and bass. There's so much creativity in there. It's not just about his death, it's about his life as well. I think that's what people forget, and this album isn't a classic or a masterpiece because he died. This album is a classic and a masterpiece because it's a classic and a masterpiece. That's it. It's a brilliant album. It's an album that will live on for a long, long time. And whilst it adds emotional weight that he died, and a lot of the lyrics allude to that, and there's like a spectral presence when you listen to it, at the end of the day, it's a bloody fantastic record, and that's the reason it'll be remembered for a long time, not just because it was his last. A true artistic statement and a fitting send-off for the man who reinvented the wheel time and time again across 6 decades. Thank you for being an endless source of inspiration to us all. And that's it, that's my best 20 records of 2016. They're the 20 that I've enjoyed, and I think they're all worth your time. This year's been an absolute roller coaster for music and for many other reasons as well. And I just want to say again, thank you so much for everybody who's supported me this far. It's been a wild ride, and I'm really enjoying doing this channel and creating this content, chatting with you guys, and hopefully you're enjoying it as much as I am. We've got a lot of exciting things planned for next year, so there's going to be a lot more cool things going on this channel, so look out for that as well. Share Deep Cuts with a friend if you think they'll enjoy it. Follow me on Deep Cuts tweets if you want to chat with me or anything like that. And I'll see you next week.